Hello, friends. This is Station 118, a weekly podcast where we'll be discussing every episode of 911, totally spoiler free, starting from the very beginning. I'm Sachi Howson.
And I'm Kapp, and welcome to our second episode. We're recapping Season 1, Episode 2, Let Go.
This episode was written by Ryan Murphy, Brad Falchuk, and Tim Minear, and was directed by Gwyneth Horder-Payton. All right, so I know that your 911 emergency for this week was very harrowing. Do you want to tell the people about it?
I do. Harrowing is exactly the word I wanted to use to describe what happened. So we said this in our last episode. Sachi's currently visiting me and staying at my house in Oregon. And so we, yesterday, drove up to a town called St. Helens, Oregon. It's where they filmed some scenes from Twilight and where they filmed Halloween Town, the Disney movie. And so we wanted to go see some of the locations and visit like some antique stores. It's about a 2-hour drive from where I live. I was driving the way up and we're like almost there. I am driving along an area. We did see a sign for this, but it happened so quickly that it was like barely any warning.
Let it be known that I was passed out in the passenger
Sachi
seat.
Was dead asleep next to me. I was driving along. I see a sign for an upcoming stop sign. And I'm slowing down for the stop sign. I'm probably going like maybe 30 miles an hour at this point. I'm slowing down because there's still some time. And I look down at the speedometer to check that. I would look down for a fraction of a second. I look back up and there's a deer running across right in front of the car. I slam on the brakes. There's a truck behind me, by the way. I slam on the brakes and the deer is like at this point, like at the front passenger bumper. There's a thud. I hit the deer.
I wake
Sachi
up.
wakes up because I've slammed on the brakes. We hit the deer. And I'm like, oh my God, I just hit a deer. Sachi wakes up like
You said,
disoriented.
oh my God, so many times.
I was in shock.
I thought you were going to start crying.
I was very scared. It was bad. The deer was fine, by the way. I need you all to know that. It ran away afterwards, like immediately. And then we drove along for a little while longer until we found a place to park and check out the car. There's some cosmetic damage because we hit a deer. It was a buck, by the way. I could see the antlers. And I left hair on the car and like scratched it up. Nothing's like broken. It's not bad. I'm not gonna like get it fixed because it's just cosmetic damage. But it was startling, and I thought about it all day, and like it exhausted me. I was like drained for the rest of the day. That's my emergency for the week.
I thought it was so funny throughout the day. I would start giggling because I was thinking about hitting this deer. And maybe I'm evil for thinking it's so funny, but it's not like that the deer got hurt. It was just your reaction and just that it happened. Tuft of fur stuck in the hood of your car.
It is still there. We haven't looked at the car this morning, but like I know it's still there because it was wedged into like the crack in the hood. And like it was fine. The deer was fine. The car was fine. Like nothing happened. So like I'm not like, I don't know. You were like, oh, maybe it makes me a bad person to laugh, but it did genuinely like diffuse the tension of the situation because I feel like I would have been far more upset like if like Sachi hadn't been laughing at it and like if it hadn't like made me chill out about it because I was very worried.
I also have this disease. But last episode I talked about my losing and forgetting things disease. This episode is about my laughing disease where whenever something like kind of bad happens and another person is in pain, emotional or physical, I start laughing. But not like too much pain. Like if Em was like genuinely really upset, I wouldn't have laughed.
And I know that.
Like a couple weeks ago, I accidentally punched my partner in the stomach. I swear it was an accident.
Accidentally.
And
I'm kidding. I know it was an accident.
But I just couldn't stop laughing after, even though I was like trying to comfort him. Maybe I am evil.
Maybe. I don't know. I think you just find slapstick humor very funny. Because, like, if this had happened to somebody on a TV show, we would have both laughed.
That's
And
true.
we were laughing, even though it happened in front of our eyes.
Mhm.
Well, not really in front of your eyes. You were asleep.
I wish I had seen it.
I barely saw it. It was like a blur. All I know is it was a deer and then it was gone. We did check on the drive back, which Sachi drove on the way back, and it was not there. So it clearly ran away and was fine. I think I bonked it on its like flank. It wasn't like the legs were crushed or anything. It was like we tapped it and it was enough impact that like everybody was startled and then it was gone. Anyway, that aside, Sachi, what's your emergency for the week?
Oh, one thing to know about me is I am constantly choking on food. I don't know why, but maybe I'm talking too much. Maybe I'm not chewing my food all the way. I do that sometimes, or I forget to chew and I kind of just like swallow a whole piece of food down like a snake, and then I'm like, ooh, that didn't feel good. But the other day, I was eating my Chipotle, and I was also talking to M, which was probably my first mistake, was talking while eating. I should take a vow of silence, at least during meal times. I say as we're recording a podcast and I'm eating a sandwich.
I'm waiting until after to eat my lunch, by the way.
I'm sensitive. I need to eat on time every
Same.
time, or I'll die. So anyways, my Chipotle, something went down the wrong pipe and I ended up choking on a hot pepper, and it burned all the way down and it hurt so bad. But what the worst part of it was that I don't know what happened, but the hot pepper lodged itself in my sternum and my left boob started burning. I was like, I ate spicy food, but with my boob, and it was just beneath my left breast for like 5 minutes. And that made the choking so much worse because I just had this boob pepper. And I've never experienced that before, like this burning sensation of having food stuck in my breast.
Oh, it's so bad though. We were on FaceTime and you just started like hacking, like violently coughing to the point where I was sitting there thinking, am I going to need to call 911 literally to your house to have them come get you and like stop you from dying? Sachi's partner was home at the time because he was working at home, and
okay, no, he was playing a video game.
Okay, he was working at home. It was a work day and he was at home. But so I didn't know he was at home at the time, so I was fully expecting to like dial the fire department and say, my friend is choking, I'm in another state, we're on FaceTime, help.
But also, he came out because he heard me choking, and he brought me a glass of water, which I did appreciate. But then he was like, okay, if you're gonna choke again, do it after this game, because I had to quit on someone online, and they were mad at me. Okay, nobody asked
Priorities. Not your life. The game. It's not like you're married or anything.
He's used to me choking and dying. It doesn't faze him anymore.
He's like, oh, again.
I'm sick of this.
Come on.
You're doing it for attention.
Let's grow up.
Your throat needs to expand a little bit
serious.
More. All right. Shall we start our recap?
We should. Let's get into it. This was a shorter intro than last time. I'm proud of us. We're doing better.
Yeah, because I didn't have 5 million follow-up stories. I was just talking and talking and talking.
You love to yap. This is why we're doing this in the first place.
Yeah. Anyways, so we start with a cold open of two like young adults, 20-somethings, late teenagers, I don't know. And they are waiting in line for a roller coaster. I hate roller coasters, so
I'm a roller coaster
I can relate
fan,
to Devan.
So I'm the other guy, I guess. What was his name? Chad? Sorry, I never write down people's names. I wrote down Devan's name. I didn't write down Chad's name. Sorry, Chad.
I was gonna say, this is a little bit of an info dump, but I think it's important. So Devan is like really nervous to get on this roller coaster, which like, okay. And then he starts talking about how he's afraid of his bowels clenching, or even if he doesn't want his bowels clenching, the adrenaline rush of like waiting for the roller coaster and then getting on is going to trigger his sympathetic nervous system, which is like your fight or flight response. What that does is it makes your digestive sphincters slow down and clench. Literally, his bowels are not moving as much and his butthole is clenched up so he doesn't poop himself. So he's talking about how scared he is of his bowels clenching, but that's actually the appropriate response and is what's stopping him from pooping himself on the roller coaster. Alternatively, your sympathetic nervous system also relaxes your bladder. So while his butthole sphincter, well, just his butt sphincter,
his sphincter, period,
may be clenched, his bladder is relaxed, so he might pee himself. So that's why a lot of times people will pee themselves when they're scared or in a traumatic situation, because their bladder loosens, the pee comes out, and then they don't have to worry about it anymore.
It's like, so don't worry about pooping yourself, but do worry about peeing yourself. Change your priorities.
Correct.
Your butt's not the thing you should be worried about. Pee right before you go on. I do feel like Devan being scared about the roller coaster. I feel bad. That was like a premonition. Like he knew that he was on 911 and that the cold open is never a good situation to be in.
I'm swallowing my food so I don't choke on camera.
You. Then you guys could see the footage of exactly what I saw the other day.
Anyways, so the two guys are talking and he's like, there's these two hot girls in front of them. And Devan's friend, whose name I've already forgotten.
If we're wrong and it's not Chad, that's going to be really embarrassing.
So unfair.
Should we look it up?
Maybe. Hold on, I have the wiki up right here.
This cold open is fed into the whole episode, so maybe we should actually know their names.
It is Chad.
You're right, yeah.
So there's these two hot girls in front of them, and Devan is like, let's just get out of line, like, yada, yada, yada. I don't want to go on this roller coaster. And Chad is like, no, if we get out of line, these two hot girls in front of us are going to see us get out of line, take a picture of us, and put it on Instagram with #pussy.
Which is such an extreme thought process of what you think is going to happen. Like, I get you're insecure and you're worried and those girls are really hot, but why would you think that about them? Like, that's so extreme and horrible. I'm sorry, dude, who hurt you?
Can you imagine someone doing that? Like, oh, you two losers are getting out of line for this roller coaster? Smile, #pussy.
Like, sorry, imagine Devan was like, I'm worried about my sphincter clenching. I need to go poop before we go on this ride.
No, he doesn't need, his sphincter is clenching, so he won't.
But he doesn't know that. He has no idea.
Clearly, because he's worried about his bowels clenching. He wants them.
He's got a sympathetic nervous system and an unsympathetic friend. Maybe if Chad was more sympathetic, they wouldn't be in this disaster situation.
So, anyways, Devan sucks it up, and they get
some
on.
Important context here while we go into the episode. Devan is plus sized, and this impacts the safety of the roller coaster because they don't check the safety bar. It doesn't latch properly, and things go awry.
When the roller coaster worker is like buckling them in, it's so obvious that it doesn't latch properly. Like, this is on you.
They said also this was the state fair, wasn't it? So it was like a temporary roller coaster. So this person probably didn't care that much. Yeah. And this is also probably why they didn't have a test seat.
Yeah, insane. Insane
so
all around.
All around. Like, come on. Let's be real. And it was a roller coaster that went upside down. Like, let's make sure people are safe.
Yeah, which didn't happen. Nobody was safe. So we see them go up, 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 and then it goes down, and we just see Chad fly out of the seat. The bar comes up because it wasn't latched properly, and Chad just flies out like Superman.
It happened so fast, like the deer.
Chad is Devan's deer.
God. He is.
But then the roller coaster is upside down, which, first of all, does not make sense. Well, it shouldn't, Because so for a roller coaster to stop, it needs to be manually
Why
stopped.
did they stop it there?
And that's the thing. They shouldn't have, but also there's no brakes there, so it's physically impossible for it to stop.
Like it should have kept going.
Yeah, so it was all just drama for
TV.
The sake of the show. Yeah, and we see Devan just hanging on to the unlatched
Yeah, he's
bar.
like linked his arms through it. He's like trying to hang on for literal dear life while they've stopped the roller coaster upside down. And there's like many other people in this roller coaster who are also now dangling upside down because somebody decided to stop it on the curve.
Where it's physically impossible to stop it. This is my worst nightmare, actually. Like, you know how I said I don't like roller coasters? I have nightmares about being on a roller coaster.
This is also a situation that you would never find yourself in because you would never go on a roller coaster.
Says you.
Why would you go on a roller coaster? Because
you're
afraid of them.
What if it's for like a business proposal?
Who is proposing something like a business proposal on a roller coaster?
I don't know. It's like my fear of horses. I don't want to be asked to ride a horse in a professional setting.
They're also allergic to horses.
Exactly. And I don't want to be near them. But what if it's like, we will give you $1 million if you ride this horse? And I'm like, I really don't want to say no to $1 million in a career, but I also don't want to ride this horse. Is there like another option?
Maybe you could find a different, like a small horse. Like a donkey. Anyway. Somebody on the ground calls 911. As you do.
And guess who shows up? Guess who shows up?
Well, guess who answers the call? Miss Skeptical
Miss
Girl Abby. She makes this face, like she like raises her eyebrow when they like, some guy just flew out of a roller coaster. She's like, that can't be real. But you know who she sends to the scene? The 118.
That rhymed.
Oh, it did. I didn't even mean to.
So they get there, and Bobby is sending Buck up, and Buck calls it daredevil hero stuff. Like, this is what he came for, to climb a roller coaster and save Devan. That is why he joined the LAFD.
His life's calling to do exactly this, and now what's he gonna do after this?
I also wrote a note, Chimney, put away the hair gel.
You were such a hater for Chimney's hair.
It looks so bad this season.
It does. He's slicked it. I say he, as though this isn't the wardrobe department. They've, like, combed it aggressively to the side like they're trying to cover a bald patch, which he doesn't have. And it looks very helmet-like. It looks like if you knocked on it, there would be a sound. And free him. Honestly, he doesn't deserve this.
He doesn't deserve a lot of what happens.
Especially this season. Actually, no, I was going to say especially this season, but, like, across
like in
the
general.
board, like, terrible things just keep happening to him. Ever since his childhood. Sorry, Chimney. No spoilers, but Chimney, free him. He's always going through it.
So, Buck goes up there. Devan asks about his friend as Buck is going up.
I think this is Buck who says this. He goes up to the top and he says, we'll get everyone off this ride safe. And I'm like, why would you say that to the people dangling upside down? Like, don't make promises to them.
This is the second time in just as many episodes.
This is a very common reoccurrence. It just happens.
He learned from Father Bobby.
If I am...
Bobby. Oh no, Pops Bobby. Bobby Pops.
Poppy. If I'm wrong and Buck didn't say that, I'm sorry, but somebody says it, and that's a crazy thing to promise.
Devan asks about Chad, and Chad is dead. Like, he Supermaned his way out of that ride and is on the floor,
hit
broken.
The ground, like the concrete.
That boy is dead, but they pretend that he's alive so that Devan doesn't start panicking while trying to be saved.
And the rest of the people on the roller coaster as well, because like they are safe for now because they're secured in, but Devan literally hanging on for dear life
by a thread. And
very easily could slip and panic.
So Buck is wearing a harness and like a carabiner. Is he gay?
I don't know. What's the gay rate on carabiners? Somebody study that.
I don't know.
Could be foreshadowing.
I don't know what he is attached to. Like, I think they just put him in a harness.
Just to, like, make it seem safe.
Like, he's not actually anchored
I mean, he was
anywhere.
climbing up the ladder. What would he be anchored to? Like, the truck? Which doesn't...
I guess...
Maybe he was anchored to, like, the ladder itself so that he wouldn't, like... So if he fell, he would still be on the ladder, because, like, I don't know. Maybe...
Sounds like it will hurt.
Yeah, but it's better than
Doesn't seem that safe.
Experiencing the Chad treatment, so...
That's true. And then he tries to save Devan. He has this loop. I don't really know what the loop is meant to do, but he's telling Devan to put his arm through the loop so that Buck can get him onto the ladder to safety. Devin
doesn't do that. And he... they frame it kind of in that moment as though he... I wrote down, did Devan slip or did he kill himself? Because I wasn't quite sure in the moment. It was very much a situation where he could have slipped. But we find out that's not the case.
But Buck is so sad when this happens. We find out that this is the first time he's lost a patient like this. Like, he's seen dead people, but he's never been, like, thought he'd be able to save them, and then they died. Also, when Devan hits the ground, there is, like, a squish.
That was foul.
Effect.
Like, they did not need to include that.
I hated it.
This, by the way, this is the second person in as many episodes who has killed themselves. Because I wrote down the suicide rate in the show is insane.
You're
this
right.
Is the second episode we had 2 suicides.
We're about to have a third.
Crazy.
This first season is definitely super, like, serious and dramatic and heavy. And then I think it kind of lightens up a little bit. I mean, it's still, like, traumatizing, but in, like, a silly, goofy way.
I do feel like with the first season too, since they weren't quite, we were still finding their footing with characterization as well. They really leaned heavily on the emergencies, just as a vehicle for storytelling, which they still do, but because characterization is so much more developed from the second season onward, it's less extreme.
So then we're back at the firehouse, and they're all eating lunch together, and Buck says he's not hungry because he's still upset that he lost Devan. And Chimney, so something about the 118 is not a single person on the team except for Hen can ever read the room. They're always being so inappropriate.
Which is insane. They're very flippant about everything.
Yeah, Chimney says, it's America, Buckaroo. Eating has nothing to do with being hungry.
We both wrote that down. That's something to talk about.
I think that's the first time we get Buckaroo as a nickname for
Buck,
Which is so
cute. I do really like it. It's very sweet. You should know, speaking of Chimney, my next note says, Chimney's hair is a helmet.
My next note is, Buck, put away the hair gel.
Real. Everybody's hair is very gelled in this first season. They were also, allergic to long hair in the first season as well. Everybody's, to the scalp.
Athena comes over to the firehouse and is having lunch
family
with them,
dinner.
Because we found out in the last episode that her and Hen are pretty good friends. And Hen says Athena is going through some stuff at home. Stuff being her husband is gay.
Speaking of her husband being gay and Athena's problems with that whole situation and her potential, impending situation, guess who she has vibes with? Immediately at the dinner table.
Oh, I think we could talk about the vibes. Like, her and Bobby have really... they don't say anything to each other, but Athena and Bobby have the most charged eye contact
crazy.
Of all time. I felt like I was intruding.
How did nobody else at the table pick up on that?
It was something. It was so charged. Yeah. But then Athena and Buck shake hands, and she gives him a smile because she knows he's feeling down.
And she, kind of talks him through what he's going through. She does say, here's something that I wrote down. So Athena says, you know why they make us wear these uniforms, right? And Chimney responds, sex appeal. Which makes sense from Mr. RomancingTheUniform.com. Okay. I'm not shocked that came from you. Anyway, but Athena talks Buck through his whole little situation, and it is helpful. He does start to feel a little bit better, but he's still very down.
It was a really sweet moment. Yeah, it was a really sweet moment. I enjoyed that first little nugget of Buck and Athena best friendism.
Mm-hmm.
You know who we cut to next?
Somebody who I forget about between every scene
Abby.
that she's in.
I forgot about her.
Every time. And I feel bad. This is not Connie Britton's fault. This is the character. It's not Connie Britton. She delivers every scene. It's not her fault. She did great. It's the character.
With what she was given. It's very much giving Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker.
It really is. It is. Oh,
all right. So Abby is like getting her stuff together. The news is on, and they're talking about the emergency that the 118 went to, where Devan died, and she's not really paying attention. But then one Evan Buckley comes on the screen and starts talking, and she runs back into the room.
She is fully sprinting to go see it. She hears his name. She hears him talking about what happened. He's devastated, by the way, on the news. He's really having a hard time. And
it is so sad to watch him talk about it on the news.
Yeah, he's like really struggling. Abby is sitting there, though, thinking, you can see it in her face. She's like, oh my god. So he was hot the whole time that we were on the phone on that call where that girl was almost kidnapped. Wow. And then it immediately cuts to her mom, who has Alzheimer's, locking herself in the bathroom accidentally because she has Alzheimer's and she can't remember how to use the locks. And Abby is yelling at her to, like, you can't lock the doors, Mom. Like, you need to stop doing this, and blaming it on her, which is crazy.
It is. Also, well, I wanted to say that Abby seeing Buck and, like, being so into him, just from, like, him giving this devastating interview that whoever did that should not have aired. It's very, what is that word, that slang Gen Z word for parasocial?
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say it was, like, trauma porn.
Oh god. No, Buck and Abby have a parasocial relationship.
Weird. They have a whole interesting vibe. I feel like interesting is putting it politely.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. As you can see, things are heading in that direction. Mm-hmm. So in this episode, we get introduced to Carla, who is the new caretaker. She's great. She becomes friends with Abby. She immediately solves the bathroom lock situation. And it just, like, this is just an introduction to a new character, and we just get to know her for the first time. And then it moves on.
Yes, so it moves on to the Grant household, where May Grant is sick in bed. But you very much get the vibe when Athena goes to check on her that she just doesn't want to go to school, that she's faking sick so she can stay home that day.
Harry Grant also makes his mom smell his breath for checking that his teeth were clean. And also, things are tense between Michael and Athena at the moment.
What?
This is not surprising. We knew that. Michael very kindly offers to make Athena coffee, and she is furious with him for daring to offer that to her. She's like, no, I don't want any.
I don't want any of your gay
she's
coffee.
Like, I'm gonna catch it. No, she's not that homophobic. I feel bad. She's not that homophobic. She's just having a very hard time dealing with this and is a bit homophobic.
We give Athena a lot of crap, and, like, I get it. It's her husband, the father of her children. Clearly it's affecting her kids, and she is allowed to be mad. But also, our podcast bio says that this is a deeply unserious podcast. So we're going to make fun of her for being homophobic and not wanting
We're
going to
give her a little bit of a rough time. And this is also she's a cop, but also her best friend is a lesbian.
Imagine being Hen in this situation and having to listen to your straight cop best friend complaining and complaining and complaining about how her husband is gay.
I'm sure Hen is sitting there like, okay. Which, I'm sorry if that's a spoiler, because we don't find out Hen is a lesbian in last episode or this episode. We actually haven't found out much about Hen at all at this point. But
all right. Well, to me,
I feel like if you can't read that, that's on you. That's not really a spoiler, but like,
it's not like part of her plot line. It's not like a coming out thing.
She just is a lesbian. We just know that from the start, or close to the start. It hasn't been explicitly said, but like, we know that.
Yeah. Okay, so this guy is on the counter of a house. We assume that it's his house and that 2 dogs somehow got into his house and are now trying to attack him. So he calls 911 and he says, quote, "I'm being attacked by devil dogs." Meanwhile, he has the spray from the sink and is like spraying the dogs in the face with the water.
Which, like, if you want the dogs to stop attacking you, I don't think aggravating them is going to make it any better. Like, all right.
I mean, later we find out that this man is maybe not the smartest person in the world.
He's made some questionable decisions.
Abby gets Athena on the call. And do you want to talk about this? The propaganda?
So,
okay.
Athena responds immediately, so we think. She is in her cop car, she's driving. She comes up to a restaurant, and like a drive-through. It's like a fast food restaurant. And in my thought process, I was thinking, okay, maybe she's like trying to get people out of the way so she can like cut through to get to the house faster or something. She starts forcing people to get out of the drive-thru so she can come through the wrong direction, by the way.
But at the end, like, when she's paying and they're giving her the food, she's facing the right direction.
That is insane. You're, okay. You jumped ahead. She forced people to get out of the way, and you think something serious is gonna happen. She's yelling about how it's police business. She gets to the window, and she's like, "Hey, can I get some burgers and also some fries, but in a separate bag?" And she just, like, skipped the line with, like, abusing her police power to get this. We do find out that the food that she's getting was a distraction for the dogs in the house to, like, lure them away from the man. But she could have just walked in.
So she gets all of the food after somehow turning her car a full 180 degrees in this drive-thru.
SUV.
And she meets the 118 at the scene. Chimney is there, and he doesn't want to go in because he is scared of the dogs. After the last episode, he was scared of the snakes. He's scared of
every animal they encounter. Like, he cannot handle animals.
No, he can't. And then we also see Hen in her signature glasses.
Finally.
She looks naked without her oversized glasses. It was so odd to see her
without glasses in the pilot.
Mm-hmm. And later in this episode, we again see her without glasses.
It's very odd. They were playing with it a lot in the early seasons, and then she just wears glasses all the time now.
Which I love. Me too. And Athena is throwing the burgers that she got, like, fully wrapped to try to lure the 2 Dobermans into this closet. And it's so funny. Like, I don't know why, but I giggle. It's just so goofy. It's so silly,
which, especially because these are clearly 2 highly trained, intelligent dogs. And they just are immediately like, oh, a wrapped burger? I'm gonna go into this closet and not, continue with the attack that I was on.
And then the man who is on the counter immediately starts flirting with Athena.
It is the cop so
who saved
fast.
him.
He's, like, immediately coming on to her. She's like, okay. I'm married. I wrote this down. I think the Hen said this. Like, they're discussing it after the situation. The dogs get taken away by animal control.
Oh, I have something to say about this. So, Hen says that animal control is going to test the dogs for rabies, but you cannot test a living animal or, like, a living dog for rabies.
Wouldn't he just have to get a rabies shot anyway, then? They would probably just give it to him as precaution.
Like, you have to test the brain matter of the animal. So, no, the dogs are not being tested for rabies.
Domestic animals wearing collars. Like, I'm sure there are vet records of them getting vaccinated for rabies.
Mm-hmm. So that's just, like, a silly little goof.
Yeah.
That, like, sometimes, like, with the roller coaster stopping upside down, it's not technically possible, but I get that it added to the dramatic effect. But the testing for rabies is just so goofy.
Like, that's
like, no, it didn't happen.
Very silly.
And they don't have rabies.
Yeah.
So back to the guy flirting with Athena. She turns him down, and Henna's like, why did you turn him down? And she's like, I'm married, dude. Like, I have a husband. And Hen says, your husband likes boys. That ring won't be on that much longer, because she's still wearing her wedding ring.
You said wedding wing?
Her wedding ring.
And Hen is basically encouraging Athena. She's like, okay, look, you need to do what you need to do, girl. Who cares if you're married? And Athena's like, no, my vows still mean something to me at this point. Like, even if we do get divorced, like, they do still mean something to me. And Hen is like, basically, I don't care. Do what you need to do, girl.
Yeah.
Which is
Hen is
kind
so
of
real.
likely advice for Hen to give. I'll refrain from elaborating.
I don't understand. What does Athena want from Michael at this point, besides for him to just go back into the closet?
Yeah, because I don't understand what she could possibly want, because they were already, she says this later in the episode, but she was saying that they were already not having sex, which makes sense because he was gay. But
and it seems like it's been years since they've had sex.
It seems like they probably last consistently had sex when they were trying to conceive their children. Which, who knows how fast that happened. They could have not had sex for a very long time. And Athena is in her mind, which we learn in this episode, she's I don't remember if she says it here or later, but she does say, like, I'm okay living a celibate life, but I guess he isn't. I guess she wants, like, the companionship of being married to him, but you should be with a man who loves you as a husband. Obviously Michael loves her, but not in a romantic way.
I just don't understand what she wants and why she wants it. It's not good for the kids. It's not good for either of them.
Yeah.
So I think she's just a little bit delusional and just stuck.
She's probably also, like, deeply afraid of change. So
that makes sense.
Any case, we also find out shortly after this, they're still at the house, by the way, of this call, and a man comes to the house and is like, what's going on? We find out that this is the owner of the house, and the guy who was on the counter getting attacked by the dogs was a robber burglarizing the house, and the dogs they lived there. None of the doors were open when they arrived to the scene, and this man flirted his way out of anybody questioning him and was just let go, and the dogs were taken away, and this poor other man comes back to his own house and finds that his dogs have been basically arrested for a crime they didn't commit because the cop on the scene wasn't paying enough attention.
When Hen realizes this, she makes the funniest face. She's like, I wrote in my notes, like, a little emoji. It's so cute. But then we cut back to Connie and Carla. Or Abby and Carla.
Carla is saying that Abby's mom is asleep. She's like, oh, she'll probably sleep for a couple of hours. Abby, I wrote this down, says, thank the Lord! She does not like her mom. And I did not catch this the first time I watched the show. She is so openly resentful of the situation that she's in, and the fact that she has to take care of her mom, and that she is, like, dealing with any of this. And at this point, that's just not healthy for anybody. Like, okay.
Yeah. And it's like, I totally get that this is a really hard situation for her, but, like, go to therapy. Don't take it out on your mom. You shouldn't be sharing these thoughts with your mom's caretaker. Like, these are inside thoughts, girl.
Abby has, like, far too casual a relationship with Carla, and I do feel like this is on Carla as well. They should have a professional relationship, but Abby immediately offers Carla a drink, and they start drinking wine together on the couch and, like, you know, talking. They start talking about Buck, etc. But in my mind, I'm sitting there thinking, is Carla still on the clock? Like, should she not be drinking just in case she needs to do her job?
So it sounds like she's off the clock, but she's avoiding going home because her and her husband are in a fight. And so she's making him sweat it out by coming home a little bit later.
And tipsy.
And, yeah. So during the day, when Carla was alone with Abby's mom, apparently Abby's mom was telling her all about Abby's ex-boyfriend, Tommy, who she keeps forgetting that he broke up with Abby, and it was supposedly like the worst breakup of Abby's life, and her mom keeps bringing it up over and over again. And then as they're having this conversation about the horrible state of Abby's love life, we find out that Buck has gone national, and he comes on the news again, once more giving the world's most awkward, depressing interview of all time.
This is a different interview, by the way. This one is set at the firehouse, which the news came to the firehouse and was like, please give us an interview, Evan Buckley. And so they start talking about Buck, and Carla is encouraging Abby to like contact him and go for it because they had vibes on the phone, and Abby like very obviously has a crush on him. And Carla says, they start talking about how like men are terrible, like men are dogs. But sorry.
First, Carla calls Buck a hunk of man meat.
I forgot about that.
Also, during the interview, they're talking about how like Buck is traumatized because this guy died in front of him. But then the interviewer is like, a lot of people online are asking if you're single.
Which is crazy. He's just had a traumatic experience and people are like coming after him. Which, like, I have a quote written down from Carla that says, he's a dog, you're a cougar.
It's so funny. But before that, she says, all firemen are dogs. And Buck is the doggiest dog of them all.
Okay. He's also done nothing to be, like, to their eyes, to be called, like, a dog. Like, they don't know anything about him, just that he's hot.
Yeah. Abby is talking about, like, why she likes Buck so much, like, talking about their first phone call when they were saving that girl, and she's like, he's the first person to thank her for basically doing her job, or for helping to save the little girl, which is fair. Like, it's nice to be recognized for like doing that hard work. But then Abby says he has so much pain in his face,
which, like, there's many things to unpack. They're both into each other, which, like, we do find that out later into the episode, like, because they do get in contact. But she, like, what issues are going on, like, on both of their, like, I know he's got mother issues, so that makes sense for him. But girl, what is this for you?
Have you seen New Girl? Do you remember the episode where Nick and Schmidt are fighting over that girl who gets horny when men are sad? That's
it. She would love both of them.
Yeah.
Also, can I jump back really quickly? She was talking about how her breakup with Tommy was like the worst breakup of her life, and she could not say why. All she said was that he broke up with her and she didn't want that to happen. And I don't that's it? Okay. She's like carrying it as some great trauma, and it's just kind of like, that is how breakups are.
Girl, I want the gossip.
Tell us what happened, or stop. You gotta give us about more. It.
Yeah.
Ugh. Anyway, Abby, after who knows how much wine and Carla's encouragement,
Carla is so invested in Abby.
She is the devil on Abby's shoulder right now, telling her to do insane things. And so Abby, again, abuse of power, calls Buck on his phone number, which she had, because she pulled it from the 911 call report, because he was like on the call with dispatch and everybody, and like his phone number was recorded. So she pulled it from her work and calls him while he is working. He's on shift. He's on a call, actually. And I don't know why he answered, but she does call him while he's at work. She's been drinking. He was like, how did you get this number? She's like, oh, tee-hee, I got it from my work. And he's like, oh, haha, completely normal about that. Like, it was so...
He's like, finally, someone as insane and clingy as I am.
She's matching my freak, and I'm obsessed. He does not know what she looks... I always find it a little bit weird that he did not know what she looks like, and she did know what he looked like, and she just, like, pulled the number out of nowhere, but, like, okay.
I do want to say, Buck looks so good, covered in soot in his turnout.
He did look really good.
Mm-hmm.
It was like artfully placed.
Yeah. He looks really young, but he looks good. And it's probably because his hair isn't schlecked to his scalp.
He looks more natural. The next scene, I don't even remember what they talk about.
It's the funeral.
Yeah, I was like thinking, I don't remember what they talked about on the call. It was just kind of like, they were just kind of vibing.
So cringe. Yeah, it was
like
cringy. They talk about the call where he lost somebody, and Abby is basically like, some people don't want to be saved. And that, which is like kind of an evil thing to say, but it does make Buck feel better. And then they say that they'll talk again. And then Abby is kind of like, and then onto the bed.
Yeah.
And then Buck goes to Devan's funeral. That's the next scene. Because he apparently hates himself.
He's like setting himself up for the worst time in the world. He goes to the funeral. He sits in the back. Devan's sister is giving a eulogy. And she's talking about Devan's like zest for life and how much she loved him, as you do at funerals. And then after, Buck comes up to her and he's like, hey, I was on the scene. I'm really sorry this happened. And she does recognize him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And she asks him, like, what happened? First of all, Buck is making it so about himself. He's like, I did everything I could. I wanted to help him. And then he says...
This was crazy.
It's like he just gave up.
And Devan's sister, rightfully, immediately becomes defensive. So she's reaming Buck out. She says, he wanted to live, and you failed him. Some of that is not true, which we find out later. But I understand why she yelled at Buck over that. Because, like, that was so inappropriate to say to somebody who just lost their brother. He honestly probably shouldn't have gone to the funeral, even.
Not at all.
That was a choice.
But we know that Buck gets overly attached to his patients.
Yeah.
Like, we even saw that with the pipe baby when he wanted to follow the baby into the hospital and stay with it.
I'm sure he would have wanted to check up on Devan, like, after the fact as well.
But I don't know. It's just an epidemic of the 118 to never read the room and just say...
Boundaries, I feel, to a lot of these little clowns are suggestions.
No tact, no boundaries, just
all.
vibes.
They don't know when to stop. So then we cut to another disaster situation. It's two girls in a high-rise building. They're in a meeting room, and they work for a law firm, and they're talking. One girl says, you know what sucks about working? The work part. Which I get. She's real for that. And the other girl's like, isn't your dad like a partner at the company? She's like, yeah, but still. And they look...
I don't care that I'm a Nepo
like,
baby.
I still don't want to work.
I still hate capitalism.
Exactly. And they look out the window. There's a window washer there, and they think he's creepy. He actually... We don't know what's going on. We don't see him do anything creepy, but they feel uncomfortable around him. He's washing the window. Everything's fine. His rope breaks. Is that what happens? He slips?
Something like that. I'm not really sure exactly really what happens. Yeah, but he is hanging from the harness by his leg.
He's like dangling there. His leg's probably like dislocated.
Yeah, this is my other worst nightmare.
That's terrible.
Roller coasters and dangling from my ankle
while you're window washing. So don't
very
wash
specific
windows. This is a terrible episode for you. So he's dangling there. The 118, of course, arrives because they respond to every emergency in the city of Los Angeles. Bobby tries to tell everybody to do what they do, but what does he want Buck to do? Like, go up to the roof?
So, yeah, Bobby wants Buck to go up the ladder while Bobby goes to the roof and secures the labels. Yeah, but Buck wants to go and secure the cables and says that he's faster.
Bobby immediately clocks that Buck doesn't want to be, like, responsible on the ladder right now. And so he's like, yeah, okay, like, you can go up and stabilize him and secure everything. I'll go on the ladder. That's totally fine. They don't really go into a lot of detail on this call. It's pretty short.
We don't even see them do the rescue. We see Buck hesitate as he's going in, And then we're immediately back at the
in the clear locker room.
The glass
Buck
locker
sitting
room.
depressed on the benches as usual.
And Bobby is just in the corner staring
He's lurking,
at him silently.
He's waiting for something to happen.
So we find out that Buck qualified to be in the Navy SEALs, and Bobby says, I didn't know you were in the Navy. And Buck says, you don't have to be in the Navy to be a SEAL, which is not true. You do have to be in the Navy, and you don't try out for the SEALs. You
like,
are
selected.
recruited. Like, you are handpicked.
Which, by the way, I need to elaborate on that quote that you said, because you were, like, talking about the misinformation that Buck is rampantly spreading. But here's what he said. You don't have to be in the Navy to be in the SEALs. You just have to be particularly badass, which, you know, I am.
This Buck is the most annoying person. It's
Bobby's gonna sit there, they're like, yeah, okay. They then start talking about Buck's reason for depression for this episode, about, like, losing Devan. And he asks Bobby, do you remember the first person you lost?
So basically, we find out that Buck didn't end up joining the SEALs because they wanted him to turn off his emotions. And we know that Buck is a water sign. If anybody is wondering, Buck is a Cancer sun because he's, like, a little bit emotionally unstable. He is a Gemini moon because if he shuts up, he will become depressed. And he's a Sagittarius rising because he's kind of a dumbass. I say
we're both also Sagittarius risings.
And you know what? It just comes with the territory.
This is why we get him.
But yes, Buck is far too much of a water sign to be in the SEALs. And you know what? That's fine. Not everybody is cut out for the U.S. military complex
and
industry.
Buck clearly...
Is that what it's called?
I think you switched the words around somewhere. Military industrial complex.
What did I say?
You said military complex industry. Well, I mean, it is a complex industry.
Anyways, back to what you were saying. Buck asks Bobby if he remembers the first person
Bobby
he lost.
Immediately has a war flashback. Like, he is rocketed back in time by, like, 25 years. And he immediately recites, like, the name and the situation and everything. How he remembers the last words of the person he lost. It's very traumatic for him. They like talk a little bit more, and Bobby kind of ends this whole discussion by giving Buck the information to a trauma counselor that is sanctioned by the department.
The LAFD.
And so he's like, hey, you don't have to talk to me, but you have to talk to somebody. So you need to go into therapy.
Which I think is a very responsible thing for Bobby to do. Especially because everything, like, the whole crux of this conversation is that Buck feels like he froze and failed Bobby for not wanting to go up the ladder at the last call. And he's like, I can't be freezing on you. I can't be letting you guys down. And so Bobby's like, okay, well, then you need to work through this. You're right. So then we cut to Buck in therapy, and he is wearing the most emo outfit ever. He looks great.
Flannel.
It's a black jean jacket over a red flannel with black
This is, like, exactly what Dean Winchester would wear. They were taking inspiration from CW Supernatural. I know there's overlap here. I know people listening to this know what I'm talking about.
The people who stand Buck and who stand Dean Winchester,
that is a circle.
It's almost a circle. So we kind of see a little bit of Buck's conversation with this counselor. They're kind of talking about his life. She asks him what he's running from. Like, why is he in this field? What is he so scared of? And then we don't get more than that at this point, and we cut to Michael and Athena's couple counseling. Athena, this is one of her worst scenes, I think, because she is sitting in this couple's counseling session talking about how angry she is, talking about how Michael being gay makes her seem like a fool to everybody.
That was a direct quote. She said it made her feel like a fool.
It makes her look like a fool.
You're right. That's even worse.
Which is even worse.
I misquoted her in my notes.
And Michael reassures her. He's like, no, nobody would ever think you're a fool. Like, this has nothing to do with you. And, like, she has just taken his entire coming out, all of this repression that he's finally breaking free from, and is making it about her. And it's crazy.
And Michael is such an enabler for Athena. Like, everything she does, he's like, no, don't even worry about it. I'm wrong. Which is not true in this situation.
So then we cut back to Buck's therapy session, and so the therapist gets up. Buck is upset again. He's kind of upset.
They've been sitting across the room from each other, by the way, at this point.
Like
a normal therapy session.
Therapist, and she crosses the room and sits right in front of him. Like, I guess he's on a couch, and then there's like a footstool, and she sits on the footstool or like the ottoman or whatever, and she takes his hand, and Buck looks up at her and kind of sobers a bit. Like, he kind of sheds the vulnerability and goes back into slutty Buck and goes, did you friend me on Facebook? But she's like, oh, like, that was before I knew you were my patient. Like, you should just delete that. Like, I shouldn't have done that. Blah, 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 blah.
This scene.
And then we go back. This is like the therapy
We're like cutting
montage.
Back and forth between Buck and Athena and Michael.
Both equally insane in opposite ways.
Yeah.
Athena is like talking about how she wants sex and she wishes that she could have sex, but that she respects and understands that Michael cannot have sex with her.
This is where she says, if you can live a celibate life, I can too.
Yeah, but the way that she says it, it seems like she's finally accepting Michael for being gay, but somehow she's just even more insane.
She's like,
and Michael,
she's like, we can work through this. It's okay that you're gay. We can still stay married.
Michael is like, okay, I understand that you are having a hard time with this, but this is not like, we are working towards you accepting this about me, not us still living together and like being a couple, because we find out that he's met somebody. And Athena is shook.
And furious, as usual.
And then we
cut back to Buck and the therapist. And we find out
who
they just had sex on the couch. And she's like getting dressed. She's like, oh my God, that was so unprofessional. I should never have done that. You're my client. And I'm like, girl, yeah, no, you shouldn't have done that. You need to lose your license. That is illegal. You cannot be doing that. It was crazy.
I hate this entire plot line. And like the way that the show treats it, like even when Buck tells Abby what happened later on, it's played off as like, oh, Buck is just a whore, and not, oh, this therapist in a position of power over Buck, who has a self-proclaimed sex addiction, took advantage of him.
He was in a vulnerable
sexually.
position. He was taken advantage of. It is one of those situations where it's like, okay, whether or not he wanted to do it didn't matter.
It never should have happened. Like, even if he came on to her, it's completely inappropriate and insane.
He doesn't ever report this, does he?
No,
she faces no consequences for this.
I think it's mentioned later on this season, but nothing ever happens. It's kind of just always played off as, that's just Buck being Buck. He even had sex with his therapist. He can't keep it in his pants.
It's like, okay, that's not the problem here.
That is that.
Crazy. We transition to Athena taking out her frustrations on how her therapy session went with Michael on trying to catch the man who burglarized the man's house with the dogs.
Also, can I just note that she is like looking at herself in the mirror, and she has a picture of just Michael there and not either of the kids.
She was really trying to manifest that marriage working. I'm glad you noticed that, because it happened so fast that I didn't realize who was in the picture, but it was just Michael. Okay. She has her priorities straight.
But she calls the dog man and she pretends to flirt with him.
Yet another instance of getting people's phone numbers through work situations and 911 calls.
And she refers to them meeting up as an afternoon delight.
And he, like, goes with it because clearly he has enough going on that he, like, this is a regular occurrence for him. It must be. Eventually she starts, like, alluding to, she says something about having Dobermans, and he figures out what's going on, and he's like, how did you get this number? And she's like, you called 911, dumbass. Turns out he's walking along the sidewalk. She's in her cop car, driving along very slowly, stalking him. He freaks out. He notices she's behind him. Her sirens go off, I think.
I don't know, but she chases
him through an alley. She, like, catches him as he's trying to climb over a fence. Other officers show up, and they are having to tell her to chill out and to stop. And they're like, girl, you got him. You need to stop.
Yeah.
Because she's, like, taking it personally.
This white man is having to stop Athena from committing police brutality.
He's like, Sergeant Grant, please, it's enough. It was so bad because she's like,
God.
She obviously is taking out her feelings of Michael making a fool out of her onto this man. She's like, nobody makes a fool out of me, and he was traumatized, clearly. I think that's the end of that scene.
Yeah. So we cut to the next emergency. It's another jumper.
Suicide rates
and Abby,
in this show.
Abby is on the phone as usual, and someone from the ground called, and they keep counting and, like, arguing about what floor the jumper is on, and Abby is like, oh my god, shut up.
The only thing I wrote down about the call with Abby is that the call quality is terrible and she sounds like a robot. It was really bad. I don't know why it was that bad for that call. My next note says, not Buck criticizing the form of suicide.
He says it had to be a jumper. It couldn't have been a gun.
Like, okay. At least with a jumper, you could talk them down. We do find out that this guy, he thinks his girlfriend cheated on him
with the werewolf-looking man from work.
And he's convinced.
Is what he
is
says.
About to kill himself. He's on a balcony and his girlfriend is on the next balcony, I believe, right? And she's trying to talk him down. They're arguing. She's not doing a bad... She's
not trying to talk
She's trying to prove he's wrong.
She says, if you want to jump, go ahead and jump.
Which is insane. Bobby ends up going up there. He is trying to force Buck to face his fears in this episode too with the jumper.
Yeah, by doing the maneuver. And we learned that the maneuver is basically Buck is going to come down from the roof of the building, harnessed in, and then he's going to swing
knock the guy into safety.
And the maneuver actually comes up a few times throughout the series.
Yes. This is consistent, which is nice. I do like that. Fun that they just refer to it as the maneuver. I do enjoy that, even though it's stupid. Bobby also comes up here and starts straight up lying to this man, trying to talk him down and relate to him. He's like, I got cheated on too. I was going to propose to this girl. We were on the top of the Eiffel Tower. I found out this information. It was crushing. It was heartbreaking. None of this happened. He's just lying to distract this guy while Buck prepares to do the maneuver.
Yeah, so before Bobby can finish his story, Buck does make it, and he swings like Spider-Man and knocks him over. And that's what, and then, like, afterwards, Buck is like, so what happened with this girl? And Bobby's like, oh, I've never had to
finish the story.
Come up with that part of it. So it was all just a big lie.
He did a great job. It was convincing. They go back to the firehouse, and at this point, Devan's sister from the funeral where she yelled at Buck shows up.
She is just sulking outside of the firehouse, staring at Buck. Like, she doesn't say anything. Buck notices her outside, and they go out and talk. She's apologizing to Buck, and she says that Devan tried to commit suicide 7 years ago. He obviously didn't succeed, but he was doing better. But in the past few months, he'd been doing worse again. And so she called Chad to get him out of the house and try to, like, make him feel better.
And she thought that him agreeing to go to the fair with Chad was a good sign because he had been really withdrawn. And then come to find out, he killed himself at the fair.
But basically the thing is, she's like, this was sad. She was like, don't you see, it's not your fault, it's my fault. No.
That's not your fault.
It's whoever strapped him in's fault.
He would not have let go if he hadn't seen his friend die and been in that situation himself. So that is on the roller coaster. I think that Devan's sister should be suing the fair.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Buck quoted to Devan's sister what Abby said to him about some people just don't want to be saved as a callback to like what she said earlier. He says that to Devan's sister and she's like, she seems to accept this. And then this is when it cuts to Abby.
I will say, like, everybody is taking this quote as like, oh wow, that really did make me feel better. But like, it just rubs me the wrong way.
I wrote down that it sounded like when Cass told Dean, what's the matter? You don't think you deserve to be saved. Which was a deeply depressing moment of that show. So, like, this is not supposed to help in this situation. Like, nobody feels better about this.
Anyways, so Abby, her mom, and Carla are all out eating dinner together, and Abby has these clear pink glasses on, and she wears them throughout the season, and I used to have, like, the same
I know which ones you're talking about. I
don't have them anymore. I broke them, but yeah, Abby and I are
You were in your Abby era.
No, don't say that.
Wearing pink glasses, wanting to date Buck. Also, you need to know, again, every time this happens, my notes say, forgot about Abby again.
Carla is saying inappropriate things about Abby and Buck in front of everyone.
Chaotically trying to convince Abby to date Buck.
And it cuts to Buck doing pull-ups in the station.
Yeah, just so we can see, like, his arm flexing.
His twinky little arm.
He was not very beefy in the first season. He had muscle, but he was like a little boy. I know. We're like, I'm 27 and Sachi is 28, so like he's in the same age group as us, and we're like, he was so small.
Okay, to be fair, I do think men like go through puberty again around that
they do.
age. So he looks
young. He looks like a college student.
So Buck is doing his pull-ups, and he gets a call from Abby, and
he's like rizzing her up over the phone. He's like, "Hey."
He goes, how old are you? And she goes, what?
Why do you ask me that?
And he goes, because you keep calling me. Apparently they never text or snap. And then he says, or Marco Polo. And I'm sorry, but I don't know what that means.
Like, does he literally mean the pool game Marco Polo? Like, yelling? Like, because I don't know who...
I feel like it's probably something really obvious.
Like, he maybe literally just meant that. But, like, he also was like, if it's really serious, we FaceTime.
Evan and I FaceTime. It's
really
Must
serious.
Be really
it's
serious.
Not like we've been friends for 6 years or anything.
She
asks him out.
Yeah, she asks him on a date to go get margaritas. Which, like... Yes, girl, I love a margarita.
Which, great. Seems like it would be a fun time. He says, sorry, no. He basically is like, this is my note. It says, sorry, you seem hot, but I need to be celibate right now. Which is basically what he says.
He also tells her he's funny. Girl, when has Abby ever been funny? Buck, I need you to explain this to me.
He's really trying, and it's not that good.
Like, he just lied to her face.
Like, she's like, oh, okay. And then they basically decide, they're like, we're not gonna go out, but we're gonna keep being friends and talking on the phone. They haven't decided whether or not they're gonna... Oh, yeah. He says, we can't go on a date, and we can't meet up, because if we do, we're going to have sex. And she's like, this is like really presumptuous of you. I can't believe you would like think that about me. He's like, no. It's because of me. We're going to have sex if we meet up, and I can't do that right now. And she's like, okay.
Emotionally, I will say, like, because he's like talking about his therapist. They've already had like a few deep conversations. This is emotional sex. Like, he may want to be physically celibate, but this boy
is a
goes so fast
emotionally. Yeah. Like, he has no concept of when to start jumping into things, and maybe it's because they first met in a high stakes emergency situation, so they like jumped a few hurdles already, but it's a choice.
But Abby is so smitten. Like, they hang up and she's like,
oh my gosh.
She is
Yeah.
And then she comes out and she's so happy. And Carla's like, how did it go? And she's like, he said no. And like giggles. And Carla's like, he said no. Why are you so happy? And she says, the right kind of no is better than the wrong kind of yes. Maybe Abby
Maybe
is
she
funny.
is, but also I feel like part of her was definitely just like sitting there giggling, being like, oh, so he wants to fuck me. She's
funny.
like, wow, he likes me. Like, she's just like, she doesn't even care. It's just the conversation was good. She's like, we're gonna call again. That was a good conversation. We were flirting. That's all I need right now.
We cut to Athena. She's just getting home. She has some cunty
Love
glasses
her.
on. I love her sunglasses. And Harry is there doing his homework, and she's like, where's your sister? Where's May? And he's like, oh, she's still in her room. And so she goes to check on May, and we see pill bottles strewn across the floor, and May has overdosed.
Unresponsive. Athena is afraid she has died. She calls 911 and she tells them that. So this is like, she's so upset. Angela Bassett delivered in this scene.
Yeah, her acting is so
it is very upsetting to watch.
Like when she is telling Abby, like, oh my god, I think she's dead. Like the way she delivers that line. Oh,
it's so hard.
It's just so heartbreaking. She does such a good job, and it's just a really tragic.
It's a
horrible scene.
Very like suicide, mental health heavy episode. So good.
We'll definitely have trigger warnings in the show notes.
Good things to know if this is something that is difficult for you or like triggering. So just keep it in mind if you're planning to watch a show and haven't. For some reason, you're listening to this before you watch it. But we are discussing this in detail because that's what happens.
Ends on a cliffhanger of Athena calling 911 because May doesn't have a pulse and she's overdosed. Ends on kind of a bummer.
And we don't know what happens until the next episode, so.
But you're gonna watch it.
Yeah, we're about to go watch it and record another episode
We're
today.
trying to, like, bulk film while we're together, and we both have off of work, so that we are ahead a little bit. Yeah, what emergency do you want the 118 to face next week?
I had to remember what I said in the last one. Because you have this whole list, and I don't.
I do have a whole
list.
This is my favorite part of the show. Forget the recap. I want to info dump about something obscure that I want the 118 to handle.
I thought of something yesterday when I was trying to think of like not yesterday, but the last time we were recording, and I almost said it then, but I didn't. I want them to have some sort of situation where they have to deal with what they think is a UFO. I want there to be like, they genuinely think it's a UFO. I'm sure there's going to be some normal explanation for it. But I think having like a UFO, like a weird government agency, some like crashed object that looks like a spaceship, something like that, just lean into like a real X-Files vibe. And I think it would be so interesting because I also think it would be fun to know who's a skeptic and who's a believer. And they're going to be arguing about this. And it's going to be great. That's what I need to see.
Buck is definitely a believer.
And you know what? I feel like in this vein, also, I'm not sure when or if this could ever happen, but I know at some point in the show, if it keep going for too long, they're going to send them to space. It's going to happen.
I actually do have that on my list, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting for a certain character, a certain rocket scientist to show up.
Yeah, I'm sure that rocket scientist would have something to say about the UFO. Anyway, what is the emergency you want them to face for your 5 minutes about a natural disaster that could hardly ever happen?
Oh, this is not a natural disaster. So, have you ever heard of the dancing plague of 1518?
Yes, I have. But for our listeners who haven't, please explain.
The dancing plague of 1518 was basically in this town in France. Well, in modern day France. At the time, it was the Holy Roman Empire. There was a mass outbreak of dancing to the death over a period of weeks. It began in July of that year when a woman, Frau, just started uncontrollably dancing in the street. Okay? And there was no music. She wasn't dancing to anything. She was just dancing.
That is so insane.
Oh, And so people started to see her, and within a few days, over 30 people had joined her. They did it so unceasingly that the only thing that stopped them was when they danced
collapsed.
to death. Like they died. This wasn't an isolated incident either. It also happened in Italy and in Saxony. And there's a bunch of different explanations for why it is, one being demonic possession.
That's clearly what happened.
That is what Bobby thinks is happening when this starts happening to the 118.
He calls his friend the firework priest and has him blessed.
He is on his knees praying the rosary. He's like, there is nothing I can do for these people besides praying
He's
my
like taking
rosary
out his
right
little
now.
bottle of holy water that he keeps on him at all times. He's like making the sign of the cross to ward off the evil of the dancing plague.
So there is some controversy over like whether people actually died, but a lot of the like first person sources claim that the epidemic, like 15 people were dying of dancing per day.
For crazy.
Right? The sources from within the city don't mention a specific number of deaths. So like the first person sources are kind of like conflicting because it was 500 years ago.
Those records are bound to be a little bit inaccurate.
But the number of dancers involved was somewhere between 50 and 400. Imagine like with no music, just in the street.
That is so crazy. Like, how did they also, I don't have that great endurance. Like, how did they keep going for that long? I don't understand it.
Some other theories as to what may have caused this besides demonic possession. Some experts think it might have been food poisoning. There is a type of fungus that grows in the grain that we use to make bread that has a psychoactive...
Isn't that what they think also was a factor in the Salem witch trials?
Yes, that's what it said. The same fungus has also been implicated in other major anomalies, including the Salem witch trials.
They were poisoned.
Yeah, so it's basically this fungus is chemical composition is very similar to LSD. So it has similar psychotropic effects.
Okay.
And then there is also a theory that it's just mass hysteria, stress induced.
Maybe
for
they
some
just
reason.
needed to dance and the peer pressure got them. They couldn't stop.
Yeah. But going back to the 118, like, who experiences more stress than the 118? Who is more codependent and would succumb to shared delusion than the members of the 118?
I feel like in terms of writing, who they would choose to start dancing first, unfortunately, is Chimney. He would be the first one to start dancing, and they'd be like, Chimney, cut it out. And he would say, I can't.
So it's like, it's funny at first, but then once they realize he's not kidding, it pans to their super serious faces.
The zoom, like
oh,
the music.
This is serious. Yeah. And it's a cliffhanger that ends with Bobby taking out his rosary beads.
Yeah. He's like,
there's nothing.
I gotta call the Vatican.
Nobody has survived dancing thus far in this epidemic. The only thing Bobby can do is pray.
Like, it got Chimney too. No. But realistically, though, he'd be like the power of two.
All right, but that is the end. That is the end of this episode. Catch us next Thursday when we're going to be talking about episode 3. And until then, you guys are welcome to share why you called 911, what emergency you want the 118 to face next week, or just anything else you might want to share with us. A lot of my info dumping is not really fact-checked, so if you want to fact-check me, feel free. You can email us at station118podcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram and Tumblr at Station118Podcast or on Twitter at Station118Pod. We also have a coffee if you want to support us financially. If you donate $5 or more, I will do a 1-question, 1-card tarot reading for you. If you want to just support us in general, then rate our podcast and leave a review.
Yeah, we would love any comments that you guys may want to leave on whatever platform that you're listening to. If you're able to leave comments on there, that would be great. Would love that. In terms of us personally, you can find me on Twitter at mkwrites, that's spelled EMKWRITES, and on Instagram at mcap1997, which is EMKAPP1997.
And you can find me on Twitter at Olivia Sachi, OLIVIASACHI, or on Instagram at Sushi Sachi. So that's it. Thanks. See you all
Thank you
next week.
guys. Bye.
Bye.